Okay, so I'm here with Bryce Bunker and Brooke Bunker Williams of Bunker Family Funeral Home.
Perfect.
Okay, Bunker Family Funeral Home. And the best way to get a hold of them is...
Go ahead.
So the best way to get a hold of me is 480-238-5558 or my email address, which is bwilliams@bunkercares.com.
Awesome.
Best way for us is to visit our website at bunkerfuneral.com or gilbertmemorialpark.com. The phone number will be in the corner, but that's 480-964-8686.
Fantastic.
And then you'll get a hold of us one way or another.
Okay.
And if you're wanting to talk to me, it would be about pre-planning. If it's about something imminent, then I'm not your girl.
Okay.
So.
We'll take good care of
Yeah, yeah, that's
okay,
right.
awesome. It's a gift.
Yeah, it really is. It's kind of the last gift that you can give. And we were talking about how, when you're making those decisions, when you're in mourning, what it does for people is they're just carrying out a plan versus having to make big decisions. It shortens some of the time that they're having to spend at the funeral home, so they can be spending time with their family.
Right.
So it just takes some of the emotion out of it, especially between siblings and that sort of thing. They're just honoring what mom and dad wanted.
Yeah. Well, and I think also we kind of project what we would want. Like, we really want to do what mom and dad wanted, but we don't know what it is, so we're guessing.
Exactly.
And that's where some disagreement comes in, because I'm just guessing based on what I would want, and sister's just guessing based on what she would want, and then, but you really don't know.
Right.
And so that's kind of where some of the strife comes in too, is
Absolutely.
you really want to do what's best for mom and dad, but you're just guessing.
Right.
So it takes all that guessing out of it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So what does a pre-planned, what would you call it? A pre-planned
Funeral.
Funeral. Okay.
Yeah.
So what does that entail? A pre-planned funeral.
So we help them decide what it is that their wishes are. Whether they want burial or cremation, whether if they want full kind of traditional services, or just what's going to meet their needs. We help them fill out what we call a vital statistics form. So it's just all of that basic information that the funeral home's going to need, for a death certificate, contact information for family, that sort of thing. So all of that information's in one place. Family's not having to search for it.
That's huge too, because it is a search, because you don't know their filing system, and a lot of times there isn't a filing system.
Right, yes.
And so you're just rummaging through paper trying to find birth certificates and records from the military and stuff like that, and you're just searching everywhere. That's huge to have that all in one place.
Yeah.
That's a huge.
And if they want to get very detailed, they can plan out their service, and we keep that in the file as well. So we can do that. And then the other part of it is that they can prepay for their final expenses, and the benefit to that is they're locking in today's pricing. What I tell people is it never gets less expensive.
Nothing does. Nothing.
Unfortunately, it doesn't. And so that's really beneficial too. So then they're not leaving that financial burden to their family as well.
Yeah, because someone has to pay for it.
Right.
And so it is another gift for it to be you, and they don't have to worry about that, because a lot of times if it's not in a trust and stuff, that money is locked up too. It's locked away, and so they're scrambling to pay for it, even though mom and dad's estate can pay them back. It's not available.
Right, exactly.
So that's huge too.
Well, and I like to educate people on the pre-planning that we do. It's a specific type of life insurance, but it's different from most life insurance in that you don't have to have a death certificate in order to draw on those funds. So with traditional life insurance, there's going to be a wait time, and so you're not going to have access to those funds. Where with this, the funds are immediately released to the funeral home, and we move forward with carrying out the plan.
And let's talk about that life insurance aspect a little bit, because I do a lot of Medicaid, Arizona long-term care planning, and all the time we love to see that, because you have to spend down to qualify for Medicaid a lot. This is a perfect way to do it, because someone's going to have to pay for it, like we said.
I meet with people who are doing spend downs regularly.
Yeah.
And as long as we make that insurance policy irrevocable, then the state doesn't look at it as an asset.
Right, so it's a way of locking up mom and dad's money for their use, and the state doesn't count it against them when they're qualified.
Exactly.
So that's something really important to think of when you're pre-planning, and you know mom and dad's gonna go downhill and they may need, assisted living or care in the future.
Right.
Pre-planning is a great way to lock away some of that estate.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's talk about some misconceptions about what you do. What is it people don't really understand about what you do, or believe something that's not true?
Well, a lot of times people think that they can come in and just pay the funeral home. They think they're gonna just write a check to the funeral home, 20 years before they pass. And many years ago, maybe they did that, and it's something that we no longer do, and that's to protect both parties.
Yeah.
The reason, you don't want a funeral home to close their doors and run away with your money.
Right.
So it's really important to protect those funds, which is why we use an insurance policy to protect those funds. It also makes it transferable. If they move out of state, they can transfer the policy to another funeral home. So really, it's for the benefit of the people who are wanting to plan.
Okay, that's fantastic. So if they come in and do a pre-plan, they're not coming in and just paying you money ahead of time.
Right.
They're really buying a life insurance type policy.
But it's based on today's pricing.
Okay.
So they're locking in today's pricing when they do that.
Yeah, because nothing goes down in
Right.
price.
And typically, traditionally, funeral costs have dramatically outpaced CPI in terms of inflation. And so even if you look at a typical interest growth that you would see on a policy, if that trend holds true and funeral costs are growing at a faster rate than even your interest is, we take the shortfall, as the funeral home take the shortfall on that. So if you bought a $5,000 policy, just to make up numbers,
Right.
our costs grew to $7,000 10 years later, but that money only grew to $6,000. As Brooke alluded to, those costs that were guaranteed at the time of the policy, you won't have to pay any more than that. The funeral home then takes the shortfall on that.
Okay, you're guaranteed that price.
Yes. And if it exceeds it, so using that same example, if you put in $5,000, our costs went to $7,000, and for some reason it outpaced that and grew to $8,000, we as a funeral home, our policy's always been that we only take what today's prices are. So we would then return that amount, those funds back to the family. So it's not a risk reward calculation for the family. They will never pay more than today's prices. So in that regard, we look at it as always being in the best benefit financially for the family.
Yeah, that money's gonna come out of someone's pocket at some time.
Sure.
It's
Sure.
just the truth.
Mhm.
It's just one of those truths of life,
Right.
And the more prepared we are, the better off we are.
And I think that, to answer your question too on the misconception, there's this interesting narrative that funeral homes can prey on the grief of families at the time of their passing when they're not in their right state of mind, and they're in a state of grief, which is completely understandable. And so as a result, there's all these regulations from the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, and things. But the reality is, any funeral home that's reputable will beg you to make those decisions far in advance before those emotions are at play, so that at the time when you lose somebody you love, you can focus on healing and on your connections and relationships with the people around you. And much of those decisions that can be overwhelming have already been made a long time ago when you weren't in a state of grief and you were in a better place mentally to make sound
When you're not the
decisions.
limbic part of your brain that's just reactionary,
Yes,
that's,
exactly.
you're in shock.
Mhm.
Right.
And so do you have people that come back sometimes and say, that's not what I did or said, or they don't even remember meeting with you or anything? Do you have that happen? I'm just imagining.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
It happens, and especially when you're dealing with an elderly demographic that they may have different medical challenges and things. Then it's not uncommon for them to be a little bit forgetful, and that's why it's important for us to maintain very specific documents, and them to maintain documents so that we both have them on file.
Yeah, and I just think that, like traumatic things that happen in my life, like my husband's in a bad accident, I can't tell you about those 2 days. I mean, I can tell you moments that really sit up and will never leave, and you know,
Right.
stuff like that. But it's really hard
Mhm.
to function when you're under shock
Under
and that
stress.
kind of
Right.
trauma.
Right.
So if
Yeah.
that decision's been made by mom and dad ahead of time, it's just
Mhm.
it's just so much easier on the children.
Right.
In fact, we call it the talk. Like,
Yeah.
you know, your parents had the talk with you when you were little. No one
Yeah.
wants to have it.
Right.
It's very
Yeah.
uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
no one wants to have the talk.
Yeah.
Right.
But now we need to have that talk with our parents, and
Mhm.
and it's uncomfortable and it's hard, and
Yeah.
they may accuse us of, just like our teenagers, you know,
Yeah.
accuse us of, why are you talking to me about this?
I
You just
know.
want me to be, you're just weird or whatever.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You know, and so,
Yeah.
but to have that talk with our parents,
Yeah.
because really that is important.
Mhm.
That so we understand what they want, you know, and sometimes depending on the parent or the child, it's a series of talks. And it's
Mhm.
just opening up the communication.
It is. That's one of the things that I just encourage people, you know, go home, talk to your family about
Yeah.
this. And most of the time when I meet with people, it's, I wish I would have done this 10 years ago.
Really,
Mhm.
really.
Yeah, you know, I wish I would have taken care of this. We've been meaning to do this.
Yes.
And I tell people,
Yes.
it's not the thing that anybody wants to talk about,
Right.
think about, pay for, but it's something that's inevitable for all of us.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's something that we're all gonna have to face at some
Mhm.
point. And it's like a shot, like the building up to it, you know, and then you're getting like, oh.
that wasn't
Whatever.
that
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
That wasn't
Yeah,
that bad.
yeah.
Yeah.
I've had that comment a lot. Like,
Right.
you made this really easy.
Yeah.
This wasn't as hard as I thought it was gonna be. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I do. I try to make it as, you know, simple as possible.
Yeah.
And so,
And do you go into people's homes if they need you to come into their
well,
home?
pre-COVID, I did a lot
Right.
more.
Right.
I did a lot more home visits.
Yeah.
I'm doing some visits.
Okay. But as a service you offer under normal
Yes,
circumstances.
yes, under normal circumstances.
Okay.
We meet at the funeral home. Sometimes people want to meet at the funeral home
Yeah.
versus their home. One thing that's been really neat since COVID is we have the capability to do a lot of things just electronically.
Yeah.
So if, you know, I know some older people aren't electronically savvy, but if they
Yeah.
have a child that is, we can take care of virtually everything electronically if they don't want, you know, that exposure,
Yeah.
but they're wanting to get something in place. We do FaceTime calls, Zoom calls, you know, that
Right.
sort of thing. So we have a lot of options,
Yeah.
especially right now.
That's great. And if kids are out of state too, you can
Mhm.
bring them all in.
Yeah,
Into the
yeah.
same-
I've worked with a lot of children who are out of state
Yeah.
who have gotten things taken care of for their parents.
That's fantastic.
Mhm.
Sometimes I find like if you really can't have that conversation and they refuse, sometimes I'll say, you know, bring it to us. We'll talk to them about it. Like
Yeah,
we're happy to take that off of your plate and let you just be the child or the spouse or whatever, and we'll talk to them. Like,
Mhm.
do you have that sometimes too, where
yeah.
maybe the ones
Yeah.
just make an appointment,
Right, yeah, I mean, I have it, you know, a lot of times where it's like, you know, my parents really don't want to talk about this, mom's a little bit more willing, can I bring mom in?
Yeah.
You know, we try to help, if we're given a heads up,
Yeah.
you know, and like I said, I've worked in assisted living, so I'm pretty good at communicating
Right.
with elderly people,
Yeah.
and really I think a lot of it is just putting them at ease.
Yeah.
You know, they just want to know that you're advocating for them, that,
Right.
that you want what's best for them, and
Yeah.
that's always my policy is I want to do what's best for you.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to talk you into anything that you don't want. I'm going to do what's best for you.
Yeah. And that's really important. I think people feel that
Mhm.
when it's sincere.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Did I miss anything? Is there something else you want to say about
No,
misconceptions?
I don't think so.
Okay. Okay. What do you wish people understood before they came to see you? Did you think of anything? Not really.
Can you think of anything? I couldn't think of anything really. I mean, really, we kind of talked about it before, but I love to be able to educate people, you know, when they're a little bit younger so that they don't, because so many people do go out and purchase an insurance policy that really isn't that great
Yeah.
for their final expenses
Right.
because it's not going to be readily available, you
Yeah.
know, that sort of thing. And so, but really that's kind of just getting them in the door to be able to educate them.
Right. Right.
So I
Um,
can't think of anything beforehand.
No, I think it's just understanding, and we've kind of covered it already, but that this is not as difficult of a process as people build it up to be in their mind, and we're fairly personable people and not overly intimidating, and they're answers that they they already have for the
Yeah.
most part, that they already know, and so there's not, an overabundance of decisions that they're making that's going to be a stressful process, but we're going to be there and make it as easy and as conversational as possible, so it doesn't feel like they're in this very scary, intimidating process of making these arrangements that are overwhelming.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it's just the fear of the unknown. They've never done this before, and
Right.
that's what people, I hear over and over. I've never done this before, so I
Yeah.
don't know. And really, if there's something that they're not quite sure of, it's okay. I have done this before.
Right.
And let me give you a couple things to think about. Does this make more sense for you, or does this make more sense for you? So it's just, helping them kind of focus in on what it is that they want.
Yeah, and I've been to your place, and it's not grim. It's a very hopeful, happy place. Actually, the ambiance is it's not intimidating, or cold.
Yeah. And I think that's one thing that we've tried to do in all of our locations. Granted, we have some facilities that one of them is over 100 years old. Obviously, we've
Oh, yeah.
updated it and
Mhm.
things, but from our staff and the way we treat people to our facilities to everything about us, our branding and everything, we try to make it feel a whole lot more approachable and, again, conversational, and not those stereotypes of being dark and cold and
Yeah.
monotone and
Right.
some, a little bit
Yeah.
bordering on creepy for some people.
Yeah,
And-
right, yeah.
And I think people find that if they've left us and don't say, well, that was a lot easier, whether it's pre-planning or whether it's funeral planning, that was a lot easier than I expected, then we have failed.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And we failed to do our job and adequately serve that family the way they deserve to, because that's at its core, our responsibility is to take that weight off of that family, whether it's a pre-plan or an at-need situation, in order for them to focus on things that are more important.
Yeah.
And one other thing I would say is too, that we're fourth generation in this industry. So, we've been serving the community here for 65 years in Mesa
Yeah.
and now in Gilbert. And so for us, it's really, an honor to carry on the legacy of serving the community. So people are what's most important to us.
And I think we grew up in a unique scenario where when the phone rang at our house, you never knew what could potentially be on the other
Oh,
side, whether
yeah.
it was a parent that lost a child or somebody that's lost a
Yeah.
parent or anything. And so from that standpoint, it's a unique way of growing up. It kind of, I think, instills in you, even in our siblings who aren't actively in the funeral business, it instills in you this respect and reverence for and empathy for people who go through the difficult process of losing somebody they love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm probably watching how your parents dealt with people who were.
Yeah,
And
we
your grandparents,
like you
so.
said, we were trained at a young age how to talk on the phone and how to take a message and how to, to do that, just because, back then my dad did get a lot of phone
Yeah.
calls at home.
At
So,
home.
yeah.
Wow.
That was pre-cell phone.
Right, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. There are only a few ways to get a hold
Yeah.
of people.
Yeah. Let's talk about the benefits of pre-planning and who should pre-plan. Okay, so.
I think everyone should pre-plan.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, really the benefits, we talked a little bit about this previously, but just to get all of the information in one
Yeah.
place, to make it so that your kids aren't having to make big decisions at an emotional time.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes, people end up making decisions that they really wouldn't have made had they pre-planned, because they are emotional. They do think they need to spend $10,000 on a casket or something,
Right,
just
right.
because they're trying
To
to
honor,
honor
right.
mom and dad, and maybe that's not the best decision for them. So it's just, it's really just making sure that, the kids don't all have to come to an agreement on things.
Yeah.
Death and money can, cause strife in even the best of families.
In the best of families.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
So,
And you'd be surprised what things, we have people all the time come, no, we won't fight, but we see, when both parents have passed away is really when we see it the most, and the smallest thing could be the most important,
Right.
Like the song that is played or
Mhm.
sung, at
right,
and that becomes something really worth fighting over because it means something to you.
right.
But it causes more strife than the parent would have wanted.
Sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's the whole goal, is to just have things in place so you're just carrying out mom and dad's wishes.
Yeah.
You're not having to make any of those big decisions. You're taking that financial burden away from the kids, you know, and just having that peace of mind for both the parents and, you know, the adult children.
Yeah. So how does someone go about making a pre-plan? What would they do?
So, well, they can reach out to, most of the time they reach out to the funeral home. That's
Okay.
because obviously that's the
Yeah.
most logical thing to do, is
Yeah.
to call the funeral home. You know, we do send out things in the mail, you know, questionnaires and that sort of thing for people to fill out, and then we'll contact them through that. But a lot of times we just see them reach out to the funeral home, and then they put us in touch
Okay.
with them.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you'll take everything from there. You've got all the paperwork, you've got all the,
Yep.
Okay.
And I tell people I'll hold your hand through the whole process.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
And I think one distinction that needs to be made too is, because I 100% agree with Brooke, I know it sounds like the answer we're supposed to have, but we really do believe everyone should pre-plan. Now, we understand that there are sudden tragic deaths that occur, and those you can't prepare for. It's
Yeah.
not, that's
Right.
not a normal part of life to prepare for those things. But as people get to their later stages in life, pre-planning does not always have to mean a financial aspect of it, of pre-funding everything. Granted, we're very much advocates for that, and we will present those options, and there are a number of options that fit within every budget for families, and we certainly are advocates for the benefits of that. But even if that doesn't fit in your particular situation at this point in time, you still have the ability to come in and make those decisions, document those decisions and those wishes for your family. You keep a copy, they keep a copy, and those are solidified. And that doesn't take anything, doesn't cost anything.
Yeah.
And that's a service that we provide 100% completely free of charge, just so people can have that peace of mind and know that their kids will know
Yeah.
what their wishes are.
That's amazing. That's really great. Yeah. I think it just simplifies for everyone. It just
Yeah.
takes the burden off.
Yeah.
That's a really great service. So Brooke, you're the pre-plan specialist.
Mhm.
If they want to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
Yes. So they can email me.
Okay.
Do you want me to say?
Yeah,
anything? Okay. bwilliams@bunkercares.com.
Okay.
They can also call me at 480-238-5558.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so Bryce, let's talk about why you do this. What gets you up in the morning, going to work? I love what I do.
Yeah. No, I mean, I do. I love what I do. Not because it's fun in the sense that you think of fun. It's certainly not a fun profession, but it's something that I take a great deal of pride in, and I find extremely important. Death is difficult. There's no getting around that. It's very emotional, and there's a great quote that says to take the pain out of death, or take the grief out of death, would be to take the love out of life. And so it's impossible for it not to hurt when we love somebody and lose somebody. But there are so many things that happen after somebody passes away, and decisions that need to be made. And it is an honor to be there side by side with the family and have them feel trust and comfort in you, and knowing that you'll be there with them every step of the way. So there's a great deal of just pride that comes in helping people during the most difficult times of their life.
Yeah. My personal belief is that the two most sacred times of a life is a birth and a death. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And having had kids, I've always believed that about birth. You know,
Sure.
after you've experienced having
Right.
a child, you know, you understand that it's really just a sacred experience. That as I've worked in this industry, just and close to people who are preparing for death or dying, or it's a privilege to be part of someone's life as that's going on, or to be part of that moment. I think is a privilege.
And it creates these special bonds that you have with people when during one of the most impactful moments of your life, you were able to spend that time with them. And when there's a death in the community, we all have this innate goodness inside of us that says, we want to help. What can we do? And the majority of the time, we don't know what to do. We don't know how to help. And we're in a unique position where we can, and we can be there, and we can help them. And that feels good and feels rewarding that you can help somebody who's in need.
Yeah, fulfilling.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.